scream tore through the cozy corner, rattling the framed vintage ads on the walls and silencing the gentle clatter of lunchtime forks. "Excuse me, are you deaf? I asked if I could get your attention." Mandy flinched, nearly sending her coffee mug flying. She'd been tucked away in the back corner banquet, head down, wrestling with supplier invoices, a task her manager, Matthew, had specifically asked her to tackle during the lull before the dinner rush. She wasn't even in her server uniform, just a plain black tee and jeans, which was probably why this woman felt so entitled to bark at her. She looked up at the source of the shriek, a woman hair lacquered into an unyielding helmet, face contorted into a furious mask. Beside her stood a gaggle of 5 others, all radiating an air of self-importance that practically shimmered in the afternoon light. One particularly smarmy-looking dude even wore a lapel pin that Mandy vaguely recognized as something diplomatic. Ambassador's aide, huh? Big deal. Mandy took a slow breath, forcing a customer service smile. "Oh, I'm sorry, I was just focused on some paperwork. How can I help you folks?" "Help us?" The woman scoffed, hands on her hips. "You can start by seating us. We've been standing here, ignored for over 20 minutes. Do you have any idea who we are?" "Ma'am, I understand you're frustrated," Mandy began, her smile feeling tighter than usual. "It's been an unexpectedly busy afternoon. Our hostess stepped away for a moment, but I'm sure she'll be right back. We seat on a first-come, first-served basis, and there are a few parties ahead of you still." "First come, first served?" the woman sneered, her voice climbing. "That's utterly ridiculous. We are important people. My colleague here is an aide to the ambassador. We have appointments, people waiting for us. We demand to be seated immediately and treated with the respect we deserve." Mandy felt a hot flush creep up her neck. Her ears were burning, and she could feel the eyes of other diners on them. "Ma'am, I assure you everyone who dines here is important to us, but we can't just skip a waiting list. As soon as a table opens up for a party of 6, we'll get you." "This is unacceptable." Another woman from the group chimed in, equally indignant. "Where is your manager? We need to speak to someone competent, someone who understands how to treat VIPs." The ambassador's aide puffed out his chest, glaring down at Mandy as if she were a piece of gum stuck to his shoe. Mandy felt her carefully constructed composure begin to crack. Her hands, usually so steady, were trembling slightly. She was a server, not a punching bag, and she was doing invoices, for goodness sake. Just as Mandy was about to explain that she wasn't actually on the floor to seat them, a calm, authoritative voice cut through the escalating clamor. "Everything all right over here, Mandy?" "Matthew? Thank God." Mandy had never been so relieved to see her boss. He was a big guy, but with a quiet strength, and he moved through the restaurant with an air of understated confidence. He looked directly at the screaming woman, a polite but unyielding expression on his face. "Absolutely not!" the helmet-haired woman shrieked, pivoting her fury towards Matthew. "Your staff is incompetent and rude. We've been waiting forever, and this girl, this child," she spat the word, glancing dismissively at Mandy, "refuses to seat us. We demand a table now, or we're leaving." Matthew's eyes flickered to Mandy, a silent question passing between them. Mandy just shook her head, her face still hot. He turned back to the group, his voice even. "Ma'am, there's no need for that kind of language or behavior. My staff is doing their best. Mandy here was actually off shift, handling administrative duties, but she was trying to help you." "Off shift or not, she works here?" the woman screeched, pointing a perfectly manicured finger at Mandy, and she was incredibly unhelpful. "We are leaving, and you can be sure we'll tell everyone in the consulate exactly what kind of deplorable service you provide." The ambassador's aide stepped forward, a smug look on his face. "Indeed, you've just lost some very influential customers. We expect an immediate apology and a complimentary meal for your disrespect." Matthew took a step closer, his gaze hardening. "No, you won't. You won't be telling anyone anything, because you won't be coming back." His voice dropped, losing its polite edge. "You've harassed my employee, disrupted my restaurant, and made a scene for other paying customers. I don't tolerate that. You're welcome to leave right now, but I want to be perfectly clear. You're not welcome in the cozy corner ever again." A shocked silence fell over the group. The woman's jaw actually dropped. "You can't do that," she sputtered, her voice no longer a shriek, but a desperate squeak. "Oh, I absolutely can," Matthew said, gesturing towards the door. "And I just did. Out now." The group stared, bewildered, for another moment before the weight of his words seemed to sink in. With a collective huff of indignation, they gathered themselves and stomped out of the restaurant, their self-important exit marred only by the swift, quiet click of Matthew locking the door behind them. Matthew sighed, running a hand through his hair. "You all right, Mandy?" Mandy let out a shaky breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Yeah," she managed, a weak smile forming. "Thanks, Matthew. That was something." "No problem. Nobody treats my team like that." He gave her a reassuring nod. "Go take 5. Grab another coffee. I'll finish up these invoices." The next few days felt like a whirlwind. Matthew had indeed added the entitled group to their digital blacklist, sharing their details with a few other local establishments. But the real kicker came a week later. Matthew called Mandy into his office, a wide grin on his face. "Remember that ambassador's aide?" he asked. Mandy groaned, already braced for another complaint. Well, apparently the actual ambassador heard about their little display. Not from them, mind you, but from a mutual contact who happened to be dining here and saw the whole thing unfold. Mandy's eyes widened. "No way." "Oh, way," Matthew chuckled. The ambassador was apparently mortified. He personally called the owner yesterday to apologize for his staff's behavior, said they were a disgrace to the consulate and had been summarily fired. Mandy gasped, a wave of vindication washing over her. "Seriously?" "Seriously?" Matthew confirmed. "And get this, he also said he'd ensure they're flagged by other businesses in town." He took it very seriously. He then slid an envelope across the desk. "And this is a little something extra from the owner, to thank you for keeping your cool and dealing with that." Inside was a generous bonus check. Mandy felt a lump form in her throat. It wasn't just the money, it was the quiet affirmation, the knowledge that her team, her family at the cozy corner, truly had her back. The entitled few might have ruined her afternoon, but they'd ultimately tasted their own bitter medicine. And Mandy couldn't help but smile. Some corners, after all, weren't meant for just anyone.
If you're still watching, you're clearly into this stuff. Go ahead and subscribe. I've got more stories just like these. Now, on to the last one.
The glint of the axe was the first thing I registered, a sickening flash under the fluorescent lights of my local grocery store. It wasn't the short, burly guy holding it, not at first. Just that cold, sharp metal, reflecting 1,000 tiny anxieties directly into my eyeballs. I was just about to pay for my pasta and sauce, lost in the mundane ritual of a Tuesday evening, when a voice, surprisingly high-pitched and strained, sliced through the muzak. "All right, you, everything in the till right now." My head snapped up, and there he was. A dude, not much taller than me, sunglasses jammed on his face in the middle of a dimly lit store, and in his hands, an actual, honest-to-God wood-chopping axe. Not a hatchet, not a knife, but a full-sized lumberjack's nightmare. And he was pointing it, quite emphatically, right at me. Now, I'm Cameron, and I tell stories. Usually they're about mistaken identity and mild retail annoyances on r/IDontWorkHereLady. But this was a whole new level of I don't work here, with the distinct possibility of becoming a cautionary tale involving hospital visits. Excuse me?" I managed, my voice sounding oddly calm like it belonged to someone else entirely. Inside, my stomach was doing acrobatic flips. "Are you talking to me?" He took a shuffling step closer, the axe wobbling a bit in his grip. He clearly wasn't a professional. His eyes, visible just over the top of the sunglasses, darted around nervously. "Yeah, you. You're standing by the register, aren't you? Open it," I said. "Give me everything." This was it. This was my moment. The ultimate r/I-don't-work-here-lady crossover episode. With an axe. My brain, bless its deranged little heart, decided that sarcasm was the most appropriate response to imminent bodily harm. "Oh, you must be new here," I drawled, trying to sound bored, as if this was a common Tuesday occurrence. "We don't usually have our cashiers holding axes, and I definitely don't have access to the till. See?" I gestured vaguely at my t-shirt and jeans. No uniform, no name tag, just a customer trying to buy some damn spaghetti. He actually paused, his brow furrowed above the sunglasses, like I'd just told him the sky was purple. "What? No, you're working the till, you were scanning stuff." "That was my dinner, pal," I said, pointing to the pasta on the conveyor belt. "I was scanning it for the actual cashier. Big difference." He stared at me for another beat, then his gaze flicked past me to the actual cashier, a young woman named Sarah who was currently frozen solid behind the counter, looking like she'd seen a ghost or an axe-wielding idiot. The robber's shoulders slumped ever so slightly. "Oh," he mumbled, a flicker of genuine confusion, almost embarrassment on his face. He then redirected his axe, with a surprising lack of grace, towards Sarah. "All right, you then. Everything out!" I honestly couldn't help but think, man, this guy is not the sharpest tool in the shed, is he? Not just for mistaking me for staff, but for choosing an axe as his weapon, which felt less intimidating and more like a prop from a bad horror movie. Just as Sarah, trembling, started to move, we heard it. The faint wail of sirens growing rapidly louder. The guy's head snapped up again, his movements jerky. He let out a frustrated grunt, looking from the till to the axe, then back to the rapidly approaching sirens. It was like he was weighing his options, and speedy getaway with pasta sauce wasn't high on the list. The double doors burst open then, not with a bang, but with a rush of tactical uniforms and the shouted commands of the police. It was swift, almost anticlimactic. 2 officers had him on the ground before he could even decide whether to drop the axe or try to chop down an officer. I sagged against the counter, suddenly feeling the full force of the adrenaline crash. My knees felt like jelly. Turns out explaining, "I don't work here, dude," to an axe-wielding robber takes a lot out of you. As they were cuffing him and hauling him out, one of the officers gave me a quick debrief. That's when I learned the real kicker. This guy had already hit 3 shops next door and was apparently working his way down the street. All with the same axe. All with presumably the same level of tactical brilliance. He truly was persistent, I'll give him that. A dumb kind of persistent, but persistent nonetheless. Reflecting on it, standing there with my cold spaghetti, I couldn't help but think about the robber's intelligence. Or lack thereof. He was out there, terrorizing people with an axe, but somehow managed to mistake a customer for a cashier. It made me realize that while he might have been smarter than the average Karen demanding to speak to my manager, it wasn't by much, and at least a Karen usually only threatens you with a verbal beatdown, not a forestry tool. Anyway, that's just another Tuesday for Cameron. Hope you enjoyed my tale, and remember, if you ever find yourself being robbed by an axe-wielding imbecile who thinks you work there, just stay calm. Or, just tell him you don't work there. It might buy you a precious second. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next story. Probably one involving less axes.
The moment her shrill voice sliced through my carefully constructed bubble of sound, I knew my good day was officially over. I could feel the familiar crawl of anxiety already, even before I pulled off my headphones. But let me back up a sec, because how I even got to that chaotic supermarket aisle is part of the story. See, I'm Julian, I'm 25, and most days I'm more acquainted with the inside of my apartment than the harsh fluorescent lights of a grocery store. Depression's a real jerk, you know? It wraps you up in this cozy, isolating blanket of just stay home. But today, I'd actually managed to pry myself out. It was a small victory, really. I'd even put on my going out outfit, a black hoodie, trusty blue jeans, and my well-worn Converse. My chunky headphones were practically glued on, blasting System of a Down to keep the world and all its little anxieties at bay. I was just trying to grab some stuff I was low on, a simple mission. I was humming along, lost in my own head, pushing my half-empty basket through the cereal aisle when I felt it, a persistent, prodding presence, a shadow hovering at the edge of my peripheral vision. I tried to ignore it, to blend into the wallpaper, but the prodding got more insistent. A tap on the shoulder, my heart rate kicked up a notch. Please don't be for me. Finally, with a sigh that probably only I could hear over the music, I pulled off my headphones and turned. Standing there was a woman, probably in her mid-30s, with that tight, impatient look on her face that just screams Karen in the making. "Took you long enough," she snapped, hands on her hips. "Now, where's the beef? I've been looking for ages, and you're just dawdling." My brain sputtered. Beef? I don't know where the beef is. I looked down at my distinctly non-uniform hoodie, then back at her. "Oh, sorry ma'am, I don't actually work here." Her face went from impatient to a deep, dangerous shade of crimson. "What do you mean you don't work here? You're standing here, you're wearing clothes, you're clearly working." "Don't you lie to me, you lazy employee." She jabbed a finger at me, practically vibrating with indignation. The panic started to set in. My chest felt tight. I could feel the heat rising in my face, my breath catching. This was exactly why I stayed home. I just wanted to disappear. I stammered. No, really, I'm just a shopper like you. I just wanted to get some. I don't care what you want, she shrieked, her voice echoing a little too loudly in the quiet aisle. I want to know where the beef is. Go get me some beef right now. My carefully constructed mental shield had shattered. The music was gone, replaced by her enraged shouts and the sudden uncomfortable silence of other shoppers pausing to stare. My hands started to shake. I could feel tears pricking at my eyes, the overwhelming pressure of a full-blown anxiety attack brewing. Without thinking, I just let go of my basket. It clattered to the floor, sending a box of instant noodles scattering. I clamped my hands over my ears, squeezing my eyes shut, trying to regulate my breathing, trying to make the world go away, just like I do at home under my blanket. Oh, look at him! Now he's throwing a tantrum. Get up and do your job, she ranted, oblivious or uncaring that I was clearly in distress. That's when other people started to step in. A younger guy, probably a stalker, and an older woman from the next aisle came over, trying to de-escalate. Ma'am, he really doesn't work here. You can see his basket, the stalker said gently. Maybe I can help you find what you need? But Karen was beyond reason. He's just trying to cover for his incompetent friend, she screeched, pointing at me, still hunched over with my hands clamped to my ears. She was losing steam on me, but her rage needed an outlet. Then the manager appeared, drawn by the commotion. He was a calm, older gentleman. Is everything all right here? He asked, taking in the scene. Me, shaking, the angry woman, the scattered noodles. No, it's not all right, Karen declared, practically puffing herself up. This employee here, she gestured wildly at me, refused to help me, then threw a childish fit when I tried to make him do his job. Now you tell him to get me some beef. The manager took a look at me, then at my abandoned basket. He looked back at her with a patient but firm expression. Ma'am, with all due respect, this young man isn't an employee of ours? He's a customer, just like you. That was the spark. Just like that, she went from enraged customer to pure unadulterated fury. Oh, so now you're lying too? You're all in on it, aren't you? You think you can just deny my authority? And before anyone could react, she hauled off and slapped the manager right across the face, a loud, sickening crack that cut through the still-present hum of the store. Everything froze, my hands dropped from my ears, my anxiety was momentarily eclipsed by sheer shock. The manager reeled back, holding his cheek. The stalker gasped. That's it, the manager said, his voice now dangerously low. Security and call the police. Karen, though, wasn't done with her performance. When the police showed up a few minutes later, she immediately launched into a theatrical sob story, pointing at me and claiming I had attacked her, and the manager was just a witness to my violence. My stomach dropped. I could barely process it, could only stare wide-eyed as she spouted these insane lies. Thankfully, the police weren't idiots. They took statements from the manager, the stalker, and the other customers who'd witnessed the whole thing. And bless modern technology, the store had cameras. After a quick review of the footage, it was painfully clear who the aggressor was. She was arrested on the spot, still yelling about how everyone was against her, how she was a victim, how she knew her rights. It was a bizarre, surreal circus, and I just wanted to be anywhere else. I ended up just abandoning my partially filled basket, grabbing my headphones and practically sprinting out of the store. I didn't even care about getting my stuff. I just needed to breathe. I haven't been back to that specific store since. Maybe I will eventually, but for now, I'm sticking to online deliveries. Going out there takes so much out of me on a good day. Dealing with a full-blown Karen, a slap, and police involvement? Yeah, that just about maxed out my social anxiety for the rest of the year. So, there you have it, folks. My latest misadventure. Sometimes you just want to get some groceries, and instead you get a front row seat to pure, unhinged chaos. Stay safe out there, Redditors. And for the love of all that is holy, if you see someone with chunky headphones, just let them be.
Still in the mood for more? Watch this video next.